Chapter 18. As the carriage rumbled along the well-worn roads leading away from the capital, Duke Alpheus sat across from his son, Ezekiel, watching as the boy gazed out the window at the rolling hills and lush greenery that signaled their approach to the family's estate. The journey from the Imperial city to their duchy was long, spanning several days, but the change in scenery was always refreshing. The air here was crisp, free of the tension that clung to the Imperial court like an ever-present mist. Ezekiel shifted in his seat, his small hands resting on his lap. He was unusually quiet, his golden eyes thoughtful as he watched the countryside roll past. His father, ever observant, took note. "You've been thinking about something," Duke Alpheus remarked, adjusting his gloves as the carriage hit a bump in the road. "Or rather, someone." Ezekiel blinked and turned his gaze away from the window, meeting his father's calculating stare. "Jeanette," he admitted after a moment. "And Princess Athanasia." The Duke raised an eyebrow, though he wasn't entirely surprised. "Go on." Ezekiel hesitated, his brows furrowing slightly. "Jeanette is always kind. She's gentle and smiles a lot, but I don't understand why she seems so lonely. Even when she's surrounded by people, it's like she's waiting for something that never comes." His father nodded, his expression unreadable. "And Athanasia?" The boy pursed his lips. "She's different. Strong, in a way Jeanette isn't. She doesn't wait for things, she acts. The court speaks highly of her, but I've noticed they watch her too closely, as if waiting for her to make a mistake." The Duke chuckled, though there was little warmth in the sound. "That's the way of the Imperial court, my son. They admire strength, but they fear it just as much." Ezekiel frowned. "But why would they fear her? She's kind too, even if she hides it. And the Emperor, he actually cares for her." His father tilted his head, studying him. "You've been watching closely." Ezekiel nodded. "I just don't understand why Jeanette and Athanasia are treated so differently. They're both daughters of the Emperor, aren't they?" A shadow crossed the Duke's face, though his smile remained polite. "Ah, but there's a difference, my son. Athanasia is his acknowledged daughter, the heir, whether the nobles like it or not. Jeanette, well, Jeanette is unacknowledged, raised away from the Imperial family. Her claim to anything depends on whether she can prove herself valuable." Ezekiel's grip on his sleeves tightened. "That's unfair." The Duke's lips curled in amusement. "Perhaps. But fairness has little place in the world of nobility. The Imperial court is a battlefield, Ezekiel. Jeanette is loved because she is harmless. Athanasia is watched because she is not." Ezekiel was silent for a long time, mulling over his father's words. The carriage continued its steady journey, the rhythmic clatter of hooves on stone filling the silence between them. Finally, the boy spoke again, quieter this time. "Then, what will happen to Jeanette?" The Duke sighed, leaning back against the plush seat. "That depends on those who guide her. And on what she chooses for herself." Ezekiel didn't know what that meant, but something about his father's tone made his chest feel heavy. He turned back to the window, watching as the trees thickened. The carriage swayed gently, the rhythmic sound of hooves against the dirt road filling the silence between father and son. Ezekiel still stared out the window, though his mind drifted elsewhere, his father's words about Athanasia and Jeanette lingering in his thoughts. But soon, another topic surfaced, one that had gnawed at him for some time. "Father," he said after a pause, his voice careful, measured. "The court speaks of me and Lucas often." Duke Alpheus hummed, adjusting his coat cuffs. "As they should. It's only natural for them to compare the two most promising young men of the Empire." Ezekiel frowned slightly. "They don't compare us like they do Athanasia and Jeanette. They don't expect one of us to fail. Instead, they expect us to surpass each other." The Duke smirked. "And isn't that exactly what you both strive for?" Ezekiel's grip on his sleeves tightened. "That's not the point. Lucas," he hesitated, irritation flashing in his golden eyes. "Lucas acts as if he's untouchable. He's talented, yes, but he looks down on everyone, mocking them as if their efforts are meaningless. His father chuckled. Because to him, they are. He's not wrong, you know. Few can match his abilities. Ezekiel exhaled sharply. That doesn't mean he has to be insufferable about it. Duke Alpheus studied his son, amusement flickering in his gaze. So you do think of him as a rival? Ezekiel stiffened. I never said that. His father only smiled knowingly. The court may enjoy pitting you two against each other, but I suspect neither of you minds. Tell me, Ezekiel, do you not feel the thrill of competition when you stand against him? Ezekiel hesitated. He wanted to deny it, to say that Lucas was nothing more than an arrogant pest, but that would be a lie. As much as he disliked the magician, he couldn't deny the truth. Lucas challenged him. And that challenge pushed him to grow. He's strong, Ezekiel admitted reluctantly. Stronger than most. But that doesn't mean he should treat others the way he does. He bullies the young lords in court, humiliates them just because he can. His father waved a hand dismissively. And who's going to stop him? The emperor favors him, and the princess tolerates his arrogance. No one dares reprimand him. Besides, the nobility will endure humiliation if it means staying on the good side of someone with real power. Ezekiel's expression darkened. That doesn't mean it's right. Duke Alpheus gave him a calculating look. So? Will you be the one to challenge him? Ezekiel clenched his jaw but didn't answer. He already had, countless times. But Lucas never took him seriously. The magician mocked him openly, laughed at his lack of an official position in court, and dismissed his talents as nothing more than a noble brat trying to prove himself. You're skilled, Ezekiel, his father continued, his tone measured. The court calls you a genius of ability, yet unlike Lucas, you have yet to be acknowledged by the emperor or the princess. Ezekiel's fingers twitched slightly. It was true. Lucas had held a position in court for years, wielding real influence despite his young age. Ezekiel, on the other hand, had nothing, no title, no recognition. To the court, he was promising but unproven. And Lucas never let him forget it. The memory of their last encounter surfaced, Lucas's smirk as he lounged in his chair at court, arms crossed as he scoffed, still playing noble prodigy, Alpheus? Let me know when they actually let you do something. Ezekiel grit his teeth. His father watched him closely, then leaned back in his seat, satisfied. Good. Ezekiel blinked, looking up. What? The Duke smirked. I had my concerns that studying abroad would dull your instincts, but it seems Lucas has been far more useful in sharpening them than any foreign tutor ever could. Ezekiel scowled. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Of course. The Duke's eyes gleamed. Why wouldn't I be pleased to see my son refuse to back down from a challenge? Ezekiel sighed, leaning back against the seat. This isn't some grand rivalry, father. Lucas and I don't admire each other. We don't even respect each other. No, but you push each other forward, whether you like it or not, the Duke countered. And that is far more valuable than admiration. The carriage slowed slightly as they neared the grand spires of Alpheus Duchy, the air cooler with the promise of home. Ezekiel exhaled, exhaustion settling over him, but his mind remained restless. Lucas had always been ahead. Always had power, recognition, and influence. But that didn't mean Ezekiel intended to stay behind. As the carriage passed through the grand iron gates of the Alpheus estate, the landscape shifted from untamed countryside to the carefully cultivated beauty of their ancestral lands. Towering oaks lined the path leading up to the mansion, their golden leaves whispering in the evening breeze. Beyond the trees, sprawling gardens stretched toward the horizon, the scent of roses and fresh earth lingering in the air. The mansion itself was a masterpiece of refined elegance, constructed from pale limestone. Its grand facade was adorned with intricate carvings and towering columns. Large arched windows gleamed in the fading sunlight, and a grand staircase led up to the entrance, where the household staff had already assembled in perfect formation. Ezekiel straightened in his seat as the carriage came to a smooth halt before the grand entrance. The footman promptly lowered the steps, and a liveried butler stepped forward with a crisp bow. "Welcome home, Your Grace, young Master Ezekiel." Duke Alpheus stepped out first, adjusting his coat with effortless grace. Ezekiel followed, stretching his legs after the long journey. As his boots met the cobblestone driveway, a familiar voice called out, "My dear husband, you certainly took your time." Ezekiel turned toward the entrance, where a woman stood at the top of the stairs, regal and poised. Duchess Serafina Alpheus was a vision of composed elegance. Her hair, a shade of deep chestnut, was gathered into an elaborate braid interwoven with pearls, a testament to both her status and her meticulous nature. Her golden eyes, so much like Ezekiel's, were sharp with intelligence yet softened with warmth as they landed on her son. She wore a gown of deep sapphire blue, its fabric cascading like water with every movement, embroidered with silver filigree reminiscent of the stars. A subtle yet undeniable aura of authority surrounded her, the kind that did not demand attention but commanded it effortlessly. Duke Alpheus smirked as he ascended the steps. "Matters of the capital rarely move at a pace we'd prefer." Serafina gave him an unimpressed look before turning her attention to Ezekiel. "And you, my dear boy. Let me look at you." Ezekiel barely had time to protest before she cupped his face with both hands, tilting his chin slightly. "Still as handsome as ever," she mused, brushing a strand of silver-white hair from his forehead. "And you haven't starved." "That's a relief." Ezekiel sighed. "Mother, you say that every time." "And I will continue to do so," she replied smoothly, before finally releasing him. "Welcome home, Ezekiel." A rare, genuine smile tugged at his lips. "It's good to be home." She turned back to her husband. "Did you both have an uneventful journey?" The Duke let out a short laugh. "That depends on what you define as uneventful. Our son spent most of the trip brooding over the Imperial court." Serafina arched a brow at Ezekiel. "Ah, yes. The court's ever-endless games. And here I was hoping you'd at least have something more interesting to report." Ezekiel rolled his eyes. "I wasn't brooding, Mother." The Duke smirked. "You were brooding." Serafina only chuckled, tucking a hand beneath Ezekiel's arm as she led him inside. "Come, you both must be tired. Dinner is prepared, and I expect to hear all about your time in the capital, preferably something more exciting than political squabbles." Ezekiel allowed himself to be guided inside, the familiar scent of polished wood, aged parchment, and faint traces of lavender greeting him. The high ceilings of the grand foyer stretched above them, supported by marble pillars carved with intricate patterns. A grand staircase curved elegantly toward the upper floors, and the glow of enchanted chandeliers bathed the space in warm golden light. As they walked toward the dining hall, Ezekiel cast a glance at his father, who seemed perfectly at ease now that he was home. His mother, ever graceful, walked beside him with the effortless authority of a woman who had ruled the duchy in her husband's absence. For the first time in months, the weight of the capital seemed to lessen on his shoulders. Yes, it was good to be home. Like, comment and subscribe to be notified for updates in the series.